Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack, back again to bring you our coverage of Shadowlands as we take a look today at conduits and legendaries as they stand so far for all the healers across the board. What we've got in our hands right now to play with as raid testing is coming up real soon. So, breaking it down, there's three types of conduits that you have to look at. There are Endurance and Finesse, which are mainly more utility. Endurance will revolve around your defensives. Finesse is often a little bit of like side utility where you're getting better movement speed. You'll be getting extra cooldown reduction off of some of your utility abilities across the board. But the biggest one is the Potency Conduits. Each of the classes has a multiple Potency Conduits that relate to their baseline spells, as you're seeing right here for Mistweaver Monk. But they also have Potency Conduits that relate to their Covenant ability, as well as you're looking at the Bone Marrow Hops, the Potency Conduit for the Necrolords, which increases the shadow damage or healing by 20%. And when Bone Dust Brew deals shadow damage or healing, it reduces its cooldown by 0.5 seconds. Fallen Order monks deal 20% more damage or healing. Weapons of Order durations increased, and Mastery bonus increased by 5%. Feline Stomp deals 10% additional damage per target, up to a maximum of 50% additional damage. So, you have those, which, if you're going with a specific covenant, you're probably going to take these conduits every single time, or more often than not, depending on which one that you have. And then you follow it up with a conduit that's going to relate more similarly to whatever kind of content that you're doing. So Jade Bond, abilities that activate Gust of Mist, reduce the CD of Invoke Yu'lon, which is, in today's term, in BFA's term, it's just your crackbird, but now it's a dragon. And the Celestial Breath healing is increased by 10%. Nourishing Chi, Life Cocoon increases healing over time by an additional 15%, and this bonus lingers for an additional 6 seconds after the shield is broken. This one I like quite a bit for 5-mans, as you want to be able to get good value across the board out of your cocoon. And one of the biggest things that happens is your healing over time effects are very often not well supported with Life Cocoon, because Life Cocoon can just break so quickly, especially at the start of expansions. So having this one at your disposal looks like it's going to be quite helpful for 5-mans. Rising Sun Revival. Our Rising Sun Kick reduces the CD of Revival by 1 second, and Revival heals targets for 10% of Revival's healing over 10 seconds as well. So, flat buff to your Revival, and if you're able to weave in a little bit of extra damage to reduce the CD, you're able to do that too. I don't think that this is going to be, no pun intended, I don't think that this conduit is going to be a good conduit to save fist weaving, as I think that a Welling build is almost inevitable for a raid environment. So, we'll see. Resplendent Mist is Gust of Mist has a 30% chance to do 25% more healing. Bit of randomosity that comes in onto this one, and more often than not, you're going to be leaning more heavily on your Essence Font to be doing the brunt of your healing in a raid environment. And while Gust of Mist is extremely strong at the beginning of expansions, if you were only be able to choose between one, I think Life Cocoon might be taking the cake for me, but we'll have a lot of opportunities to test them. In my experience, testing on PT or beta so far, Life Cocoon's Nourishing Chi was especially helpful. Legendaries, just at the time of this video, just today got added to be able to play with, so they're definitely high on my list to play around with, but let's break them down so far. You got your General Monk Legendaries, where Touch of Death CD is reduced by 60 seconds. You get 12% haste until your Celestial ends, I believe is Invoker's Delight. I know you're not getting 6,000 haste or 60 million haste. Rolls an additional charge. Woo. And Ancient Teachings of the Monastery, where your Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, and Rising Sun Kick heal for 50% of the damage done to an injured ally. That's just a typo on the Wowhead site. On beta right now, I just checked before we started. It is 50% of the damage done. Ancient Teachings, I'm extraordinarily excited for, as this could be a very nice conduit to help out 5-man healing for Mistweaver monks. I'm going to cut out the word conduit healing, or conduit use, I promise. But that would be really, really cool to see. And that's kind of what Monk needs, is that you're inevitably going to be adding damage. You're inevitably going to want to mix in some damage here and there. And what better way to do so by being able to add more healing while you're DPSing. Celestial Breath, activating TFT, causes you to exhale the breath of Yu'lon, healing 6 allies within 15 yards for 40% of spell power. Times 3. This, not really that interesting. I mean, it comes down to, hey, if it's tuned really highly, everybody will like it, and you can get people stacked up or get people close enough to you as you activate TFT. Yay for healing. Soothing Focus. Healing with Enveloping or Vivify while channeling Soothing increases their healing done by 6% and reduces their mana cost by 10%, stacking 3 times. So once your Soothing Mist channel ends, the effect is actually cancelled. This feels really terrible, first and foremost. Trying to revolve gameplay around Soothing Mist has been tried a number of times, well before I started playing Monk, really, and it just always seemed to just fade away. It just never really seemed to start gaining some momentum. Maybe if they start making Soothing, this effect not fade immediately, you have, 5 or 6 seconds to begin channeling Soothing Mist, so you're trying to maintain this buff forever. But I think, even in general, having your gameplay revolving around Soothing Mist isn't really necessarily that spectacular, and you're gonna have to constantly stutter step for any sort of mechanics just to be able to maintain a buff like this. Not really high on my list in terms of fun. Don't think it's really high on my list in terms of actual value. Keep in mind, some of these things could have super high value, like Celestial Breath, but they're not fun to be able to play around with. It doesn't feel amazing when you're like, oh, well, I activate TFT every 30 seconds and I do a bunch of healing. Great. Very skillful, Uplifting Mists. Now, this is one that's going to be very fun. You guys remember Extend Life? Renewing Mist will apply Extend Life to the initial target, instantly healing them for 26% of spell power, and increasing all healing done to them by 15% for 12 seconds. When you heal Enveloping or Vivify, half of that heal is also applied to targets with your Extend Life effect. So, one of the nice things about this is that you have 2 mechanics you can start keeping an eye out for. You're going to be able to know that you can put Renewing Mist on whoever you want, so you can apply Extend Life to that target. So if you know, for example, tanks are going to get clobbered on some encounters, even if the target might be topped off, you might want to be putting Renewing Mist onto them, and then allowing Renewing Mist to jump to other targets once it heals a full health target, and then you can more easily establish strong Vivify cleaves while still putting a lot of healing onto that tank if they start taking damage a little bit later on. This is, of course, your Tier 18 2-piece, 4-piece, which ever since Tier 18, Mistweaver monks have been asking for. So, big case, about time. I think that this is one of those legendaries that, yeah, you're not going to be having as many Renewing Mists as I believe Multi-Strike was giving you more back in the day, but all this really has to do is be tuned more appropriately and crank the dial, and then you're going to be able to start working with it. But every, 8-9 seconds, you're going to be able to add a new Extend Life target. You can start balancing some of your pseudo ramp effects, pooling your Renewing Mists so that you can use them leading up to a big damaging event. You can start thinking more critically about who you want to apply these long-lasting healing over time effects onto, or beacon effects to, and you can really go to town. I think that this is one of the legendaries that Monk's been wanting to have for a very long time, and starts having a little bit more interaction for a caster type build. As much as I love fist weaving, and as much as I love being in melee and being able to damage to heal, this is a great way to start pushing Monk towards caster builds in a very interesting and very fun way, rather than just saying, well, just let's buff Vivify again, right? As it looked like they were doing when the Font of Life trait became a legendary, but that, of course, was cancelled. So, looking pretty good in the Monk department there. Shaman. Now, I had a chance to actually play some Shaman before I got into this, and going through some 5-bans, because we didn't have raid testing just yet, I was pretty impressed by what was going on. So, Embrace of the Earth. Earth Shields increase your healing done to the target by an additional 5%. Heavy Rainfall, using Healing Tide, increases the healing of your healing rain by 150% for 20 seconds. And Nature's Reach, Chain heals a 40% chance to jump to an additional ally. Swirling Currents, using Healing Stream, increases the healing of your next 3 Surge, Wave, or Riptides by 20%. And there's going to be Covenant Shaman interactions, no doubt, which inevitably will increase their duration, increase their healing done, increase those effects that you'll see. And you'll be able to see them on Wowhead once they add them to the game. Going off of this, pretty much just going to be reinforcing what Shaman's already, known for and what they're already good at. I don't think with as long of a cooldown Healing Tide Totem CD is, that having the occasional buffed up Healing Rain is going to be worth it, especially because that Healing Rain's going off at the same time, that buffed Healing Rain's going off at the same time that your raid cooldown's going off. Chain Heal, just overall, if gameplay is going to continue to revolve around Chain Heal, 40% of the time it'll jump to an additional ally, huzzah, more healing. I got pretty good value out of the Healing Stream Totem, increasing the healing of my next Surge, Wave, or Riptides, and the Earth Shield one just seemed a little bit undertuned at the moment, but there's supposed to be Conduit ranks coming up as well, so maybe being able to rank up this Earth Shield Conduit will start helping quite a bit in the nearby future. Shaman overall has a ton of resources at their disposal to continue being that healer you always want to have in raids, and while their mastery might feel bad in farm content, and it may not feel stellar to be playing Shaman right now in BFA as the Paladins are getting all the rank 1 parses ever, Shaman's still going to be brought to progression, and the Legendaries also seem to be reinforcing that as well. Earth and Harmony, Earth Shield's healing increased by 300% if your Earth Shield target's below 50, and Healing Wave adds a stack of Earth Shield to your target, up to 9 stacks. This Legendary is like very close to being possibly good. Earth Shield in general isn't like some super stellar healing ability, but you're able to maintain it forever as well. Just is going to cost you that 1 global. I think if they ended up increasing the HP target, so if Earth Shield target is below 75, 80% HP, then you get that additional healing coming forward. That could be really strong. You could also see if you could mix around with the Surge of the Earth talent, which is replacing Earth Shield on the talent row for Resto Shamans. So having that, instead of it consumes 3 charges and heals 6 allies, which to me I think is insane. Instead, if they started making it so that it instantly consumes 3 charges of Earth Shield, instantly giving you a nice power-packed punch of healing into that target, especially with the Earth and Harmony Legendary, you could really start having something that, yeah, it's not a full-on external, but every 20 seconds you could really pummel in some huge healing. It, of course, would require Surge of the Earth to be changed. You know, Earth and Harmony being changed as well would be great, but I think that there is room there to further develop Shaman's single target healing and their tank support in a pretty big way that's not going to just absolutely break them. You know, it's not going to be the absolute end of the world if Shaman gets some better tank support for Mythic Plus, because while it was not bad, and it wasn't bad healing as Shaman and M Plus and some of the beta that I was doing, it could definitely use some more help, and seeing where people started pulling more than 1 or 2 packs at a time, it starts getting really, really stressful, and you lean on your mastery healing quite a bit in some of those instances. A Healing Wave, Healing Surge increase the healing of your next chain heal by X%. We've already seen this before with the focus of Jonah with a 10% per stack. I believe it's the same. Primal Tidal Core, every 4 cast of Riptide, also applies Riptide to another friendly target. And Spirit Walker's Tidal Totem, after using Mana Tide, the cast time of Healing Wave and Chain Heals reduced by 50%, and the Mana Costed Chain Heal and Healing Waves reduced by 100%. So you get a 10-second Innervate with haste on top of that, which you can start breaking up your raid CDs in a really strong way as well, or stacking them together if you need to. So further reinforcing that Shaman has a whole lot of potential and a lot to bring to the raid table on this one. I think there's going to be some really good flexibility. You also are going to have a generic legendary, whereby using Bloodlust, for example, is going to... Is it Bloodlust? It's going to be giving you, for example, longer duration of... There is going to be the increased duration of Bloodlust. The one I'm thinking of is also going to be giving you Spirit Walker's Grace for a longer period of time and having that further and further stacked. And I thought it was here, but it might have been removed. We'll have to check on that one. Priest. Oh, what we've all been waiting for. I've had a ton of time to play with Priest's Conduits and really start learning a lot as to where they're going to be headed. So, for Potency Conduits for Discipline, Exaltation, Rapture's durations increased by 2 seconds, and its shield enhancements increased by 10%. Overall, great efficiency for your resources and time, and especially in a raid environment. Pain Transformation. Pain Sub also heals your target for 10% of their maximum HP. Not the end of the world. I wish that this would also include applying Atonement to the target, or refreshing Atonement, or applying like a 30-second Atonement to it, for example. Just the heal on its own is okay, but if you're really like being greedy and trying to min-max your damage in a 5-man environment, getting that extra Atonement application has some decent value, especially when you consider the rest of the options are not that ridiculous coming in for Discipline. Shining Radiance, Powered Radiance healing is increased by 10%, and Swift Penitence, the damage or healing of your first bolt of Penance is increased by 15%. They kind of go back and forth with how strong Penance is every expansion. This expansion, meaning Shadowlands, it's actually going to be quite good. In BFA, Penance was really terribly weak, and having a buff for your first bolt is going to be alright. Holy Priest, you got Focused Mending. Prayer of Mending's first target is healed by an additional 15%. Lasting Spirit, Guardian Spirit's duration's increased by 5 seconds, and it increases healing received by an additional 10%. So, the next one as well, the one that's not listed here, is the conduit with which your holy words are reduced by an additional 5% by your other abilities. So it's just like an extra second, I believe, with cooldown reduction for your flash, for your prayer of healing, all the abilities that usually trigger your holy word cooldown reduction. It's like an extra second here or there, or something along those lines. So pretty much, you know, raid-wise, you have Prayer of Mending. Raid-wise, you have extra, you basically have like a Light of the Naru, extra effect added on top, and then more Guardian Spirit interaction to further support you. One piece that I was playing with on beta was Rabid Shadows, where your Shadow Fiend's attack speeds increase by 20% and it deals 10% more damage. I was playing around with this idea to try to just buff up my pet as best as I possibly could. It had some mixed results. I don't know if there was some missing interaction or something like that as I tried to pair it up with the Shadow Legendary to further buff the damage. It seemed like a piece of it was missing, but we also have the Covenant Priest Soulbind legendaries as well. So the Potency Conduit for Kyrian, Ascended Blast deals more damage, Ascended Eruption deals an additional 1% damage per stack, and Holy Transfusion's durations increase, deals more damage, Fey Blessing affects more spells, Mind Games lasts longer. For all of these, it pretty much seems like you're going to want to be able to take these Potency Conduits for your Covenant abilities pretty much every time. Having Ascended Blast dealing 20% more damage is actually phenomenal. Being able to play with this Potency Conduit in 5-mans, it worked incredibly well. The Unholy Transfusion, it's a little bit more noticeable, but that's of course because Unholy Transfusion's a minute cooldown as opposed to the big, beefy 3-minute cooldown that you get out of Boon of the Ascended. So you're kind of expecting it to be even greater every time that you hit it. Overall, I'd say Priest is looking to be in a pretty strong spot, and that's further bolstered by their legendaries. We already saw that there's a conduit to synergize with Rapture and give you 2 additional seconds to the duration. And now, Clarity of Mind during Rapture, shield costs 20% less mana and applies 6-second longer atonements. So you're already able to build conduit and legendary interactions that are going to be able to further support them. Crystalline Reflection, more of a PvP focus where shield instantly heals the target and reflects damage absorbed. Kiss of Death. We love to see it. Shadow or Death's cooldown's reduced by 8 seconds and causes its damage to trigger Atonement. This is a little scary. So Shadow or Death in Shadowlands is going to deal 100% more damage if the target's below 20%. It's also going to reflect that damage back to you if you don't kill the target. So what this really involved was the Atonement transfer gets triggered first. Then you take the damage. If you're already around full HP, most of the time you'll be fine. But in an experiment, I did end up murdering myself from, I think it was 80 or 90% HP. The target was sub 20%. I hit Schism. I had a Shadow Covenant buff as well. I hit Shadow or Death, and it just straight murdered me. So keep that in mind, that there's going to be some very niche situations coming into it, but the payoff, the atonement transfer rate is just absurdly strong. Being able to deal that much damage, it just would completely top people off. This is like almost, I'd say almost Light's Wrath level, but it's a shorter cooldown and it could kill you. So there's a little bit of a trade-off on that one, but it's one for discipline I absolutely love. Penitent one. Powered Radiance is a 50% chance to cause your next penance to be free and fire 3 extra bolts. Not really that impressed on this one. Penance is supposed to be better, without a question, but a long 6-second channel for your penance, as well as the fact that you can only have 1 legendary, doesn't really make me super hyped about it, especially because we got Kiss of Death. That's pretty cool. Holy Priest. The Alabaster Lady was removed, and if you guys are going to try to get fiery in the comments, I have plenty of 6% Apotheosis uptimes to show for you in the Legion pre-patch. Regardless, Divine Image. When you use a Holy Word spell, you have a chance to summon an image of an Naru at your side. For 15 seconds, whenever you cast a spell, the Naru will cast a similar one. We've seen Invoke the Naru before. It will even replicate Divine Hymn and like a tick of it. It really should have stayed as a Legion artifact ability. through testing, it wasn't overwhelming. I'll say straight up, it just wasn't really overwhelming when I played around with it. Going forward, I don't expect it to really improve much more than there, but we'll end up seeing. Flash concentration. Each time you cast Flash, your next heal cast within 15 has its casting time reduced and healing increased. This one was alright to be able to help further support your throughput, and basically Holy Priest in 5-mans has very frequently needed a lot of extra healing support, and being able to make it more efficient by weaving in heal casts every now and then certainly helps out, but I wouldn't say it's something that really easily enables Holy Priests to succeed in 5-mans. They still need something more. Harmonious Apparatus. Circle healing reduces Sanctify. Prayer of Mending reduces Serenity. Holy Fire reduces Chastise by 4 seconds. It's a bit of extra cooldown reduction, and whoopee, cooldown reduction. A little bit of extra throughput that you're going to be able to provide. And Zanshi, Return of Archbishop Benedictus. You guys know it, you guys love it, and you better believe that they were going to add this legendary. After Spirit of Redemption expires, you revive at up to 100% HP based on your effectiveness during Spirit of Redemption. What that means is that once you go into Spirit of Redemption, once you die as a Holy Priest, you actually start gaining stacks based on how much you're healing. In my experience, it's like, use a holy word, cast a couple prayer of healings, everything's free in your Spirit of Redemption. You will basically res with 100% HP. There's some functionality for cheesy mechanics throughout Legion. We never really had a moment where we're like, we need to have a Holy Priest cloak in order to do this, because there's a massive quantity of immunities in the game that can start doing similar jobs to this. This is, in truth, just a great progression legendary. If you're ever really worried about being on the floor as you're progressing on bosses, you never want to be the first death type of deal, this gives you a second chance as you're learning the mechanics, as you're walking yourself through them, all of that stuff, to have a bit of an easier time. By and large, I don't think it's super insane, though. The big ones to note for Shadow Priests, which can possibly relate to Discipline as well. Your Shadow Flame Prism, your Shadow Fiend or Mindbender deal 20% additional damage as Shadow Flame damage, and the CD on Shadow Fiend and Mindbender is reduced by 40%. So, lots of extra cooldown reduction, lots of damage, lots of potential for a little bit of pet interactions. I also want to make sure I don't miss out on Leap of Faith, causing you to leap to your target. I love this legendary. Only problem is, we don't have room to actually use it, right? Having this legendary is almost like not having it at all, because you can only equip one legendary at a time, and while the Power Infusion one replicating its effects is also good, you could also just not share with anybody, and then run Kiss of Death, Cauterizing Shadows is actually pretty strong, and it works as the enemy dies as well. And because it's based off max HP, you can really do a lot of healing just by multi-dotting pretty regularly and pretty often. So, really love to see it on that one. Coming soon! Resto Druid Potency Conduits. We will be seeing them very soon. At the moment, not yet implemented. For their legendaries, though, we got Wild Growth. There's a 25% chance to cause your next rejuve or regrowth apply 2 additional allies within 20 yards of the target. More of a raid group focus. Honestly, some random extra heals that you'll be able to toss out. Nothing really insane. The Dark Titan's Lesson. You may Life Bloom 2 targets at once, and Life Bloom's final healing is increased by 200%. Oh my goodness, this is going to make 5-mans even easier than ever for Resto Druids. Having both effects out of photosynthesis and even more blooms that you'll be able to pump into the tank. I don't even know if Resto Druid even needs this at the moment, but if you're ever struggling with some Resto Druid healing in 5-mans, this is a phenomenal legendary to help further buff it. Swift Mend no longer consumes a heal over time effect and extends the duration of your heal over time effects on the target by 10 seconds. Yeah, you could maybe get some huge hots onto the tank if they're getting clobbered, and extend Stenarian Ward on top of your Life Bloom and everything else going on to them. But at that point, in my experience playing Druid, usually if you're able to toss all your hots onto them and you have a super low cooldown on Iron Bark as is, you don't really need to take up your legendary spot. Keep in mind, you don't need to take up the legendary spot just to be able to extend them further. It's convenient, but I don't think it's really needed. Rejuve healing is a 2% chance to create a new Rejuve on a nearby target. I think this is one that was going to see a lot of play, personally, especially in early progression content. Memory of the Mother Tree might also see some as well, but I think it's a little bit too much randomosity that you'd be seeing. But we've already seen the tier 19 Resto 4-piece bonus going into effect previously, and extra rejuves are just generally good. I'm not super blown away by these Druid Legendaries, mainly from a rating perspective. Resto Druid's already very good in 5-mans, and not much is going to change it there. And it seems almost like they want to continue to double down in that area without giving consideration to moving Trank, to be able to make Wild Growth a stronger ability, changing up the mastery, start moving things in some directions that aren't making it just the top tier 5-man healer for 6 years running, right? One thing that's pretty impressive, the Heart of the Wild legendary, where Thick Hide, Astral Influence, Feline Swiftness, Yseraph's Gifts are increased by 100%, and when you shift into your affinity form, you gain Heart of the Wild for 15 seconds once every minute. This just seems in general like you're going to be wanting it for 5-mans, because you're already strong enough in the throughput department to be able to make a really big impact there. So why not get Heart of the Wild every minute for 15 seconds, add extra damage, and Chicken Weave, question mark? We're probably so Kitty Weave. We'll see. Paladin legendaries. Their conduits only have endurance and finesse, so it's more like utility based. The legendaries, however, you have Shock Barrier, protecting the target with, or Holy Shock protects the target with a shield. You really don't generate that many Holy Shocks on beta right now, especially if you're running, especially if you're using Crusader Strikes to further reduce Shock's cooldown. You actually start burning mana at a crazy quick rate. So leaning on Holy Shocks to be like your bread and butter and to continue relying on that gameplay interaction doesn't seem like it's going to be that successful at the beginning of Shadowlands. Maybe things will change over time. We'll see. Shadowbreaker, Dawn of the Sun. Light of Dawn's range is increased. It's basically the Breaking Dawn effect. Increased range, increased healing. Cool. Influence of the Sunwell. Infusion of Light is an additional charge, and its effects are increased by 20%. Right now, going through beta dungeons on my Paladin, I am extraordinarily concerned with their healing. Just their throughput, period. It's just not very heavy. Maybe it'll feel a little bit better when you get into a raiding environment, but like a 2.5 second cast on your Holy Light to barely heal 15% of somebody's HP is just, oh, it's just a nightmare. You do not heal very much with your abilities, just by and large. Crusader Strike should cost some mana, I'm with you there, but it costs way too much mana just to be able to funnel more cooldown reduction for a cheap ability in Holy Shock, which, again, you can't even really generate that much, and doesn't do nearly as much healing as it did with Glimmer. Glimmer in general is just pretty weak. It doesn't have phenomenal effects. Beacon of Virtue pretty much ooms you very quickly, as it does have a very hefty price attached to it, and it seems like Paladin, while it brings Devotion Aura, it doesn't really bring enough power, enough oomph to the table to really start making a big difference in a raiding group. And you might just need tons and tons of throughput at the beginning, and if damage is constant and steady, that further devalues Devotion Aura, which is more interested in specific bursts of damage that'll level people's entire health pools. But if things are just constantly ticking away, it doesn't make it as valuable, and it puts a greater need on raw throughput, which, unless the tanks are suddenly getting clobbered and you're getting them both clobbered constantly, where double beacon is always going to be the play and always going to achieve insane value, something like that, you're going to kind of be in trouble with Paladin at the moment. I'm not super thrilled with the legendaries. We'll see what the conduits are coming around, but if they follow the pattern that we've seen from all the other healers thus far, they're not going to be so insanely powerful that they'll change the game for the spec. We'll see what raid testing is going to bring, but I'd really expect Paladin to do quite poorly in it at the very start, so we'll see. That's been our coverage so far of the conduits, the potency conduits and legendaries that we have at the moment for each of the healers. Right now, I think that before we got into any raid testing, both Disc and Holy look like they can be throughput monsters, while Disc, of course, brings crazy utility and damage to the table. Shaman looks like it's going to be having some very cool tools. I think that those are some of the winners that we're seeing so far. Mistweaver, I do think that the Extend Life Legendary, the Uplifting Mists, is really going to see a lot of play in a raiding environment. Their 5-man capacity seems to be a little bit shaken up here and there, but Ancients and Teachings of the Monastery might just need a couple more buffs to start making that more of a reality. Have a kick weaving stay in a 5-man environment and make it a little bit more of a reality. Resto Druid just sort of doubles down on what it's already been good at, and I guess Holy Priest is the same story as well. They're just staying in their lanes, staying with the common things, while some other classes just start getting more interesting legendaries and more interesting tools to go with them. Let me know what you guys think, as we got so much going on lately. There's going to be a ton of Shadowlands content coming out, and if you haven't caught up on the Twitch as well, be sure to check it out in the description below, as we're going to be streaming all kinds of raid testing, Mythic Plus, and as much of Shadowlands as we can dig ourselves into before it drops. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll catch you all next time.